And
Ah,
we're recording.
I like it.
So, yeah, talking with Andy McCarthy of People Surge today. Andy, how are you?
I'm doing well, Paul. I'd say well to quite well. How are you today?
Well, dude, I'm well to quite well as well. Can't no complaints here. Just doing what I can to survive and thrive in these uncertain times, as the cliche goes.
Heard that.
Yeah, so you've been doing a lot of stuff with visioning, goal setting, a lot of, I guess you would say, just general consulting for businesses, but maybe just like sum that up because that can be a very broad term, myself included, of some of the stuff that you do.
Yeah. So at its core, we help build out teams. So we help with communication, and we help make sure you're hiring the right people. Help evaluate your team, and we help create a way to come up with a people strategy to move forward and get the most out of your people. So along with that comes all the strategy or different components of business strategy, which for me is about visioning, making sure your values and your culture are set up right, and then having tactical ways to achieve that vision or goals and a structure to be able to get there.
Okay. And then what, like, I mean, what was like, would you say one of the main ways that you start? I mean, do you kind of just start with like, do people come to you saying, "Hey, Andy, we need X, Y, Z," or is it more like, "We need help. We don't know where to start. Just show us what to do"?
Yeah, I mean, so I've been doing this for a year and a half or so now, and I think it took me a long time to figure out, what is that quick elevator pitch on what we do, because I feel like I could probably help out everybody, but that can be a daunting process, and understanding how we help people is tough, right? So I mean, again, at its core, we really help problem solve and help people achieve confidence with the team they have around them. Um, and but people are trying to figure out how we can help them if you're growing, and if you have questions about how to do that appropriately, we can really help with that. So it's not just how to get more clients and keep up with that, but how do you marry those two ideas and make sure you have the right people doing all the different components of your organization.
Got it. Got it. And so you've been doing it a year now. We know each other from the King of Pops
Mm-hmm.
space, but I mean, how would you see that as like a transition from what you were doing before of running a business and actually a couple different types of businesses to now you're advising those folks? Are you finding that that maybe businesses that are seemingly further along, making millions of dollars or whatever, actually aren't as like savvy as maybe people might think?
Yeah, it's been super interesting to get under the hood with a bunch of different organizations. And it's kind of been, affirming for me on some of those self-limiting beliefs. You think everybody's got it figured out, and then you get under the hood and you realize that nobody's really got it figured out. And so I think there's always ways that people can improve. Uh, so it's been fun to kind of play in that space. I think as far as going from, building an organization to just kind of advising and helping people come up with the right decisions along the way has been a bit of an adjustment because it's fun to make a decision on something and then go do it. And right now, the majority of what I do is just help make that decision. And then I empower other people to go do it. Uh, so that's been a little bit of an adjustment for me, and kind of an interesting one because I like the building of things as well. The making of the popsicles and the selling of the popsicles. Um,
Right, right.
but I mean, I get to sit in basically on like in boardroom type settings all the time and facilitate conversations and help people come up with ideas, and that's super fun as well.
Yeah, because I can imagine like in that boardroom, there's a lot of ideas being thrown out there, and from you and your outside perspective, not just as someone who's not in the weeds of things, but also from the experience and background that you've got, I'm sure you're able to give that perspective of like, yeah, listen, what you're saying sounds good, but it's completely irrational or not practical or anything that's just not executable. Because it is fun to just throw out ideas. That's the best part. But then when you actually put them into action, you're like, God damn, that idea actually isn't working at all. So I mean, is that some of the stuff, or I guess just to summarize kind of what you were saying of how you approach those things?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, when you're in an organization and you're doing it every day, all day, trying to make all the right choices, you can't see what's right here. And so having the opportunity for someone from the outside to come in and show you that thing that's right in front of your face can be eye-opening. For me, I joined this kind of mastermind type group a few years ago called Vistage. That was a bunch of different owners and CEO type folks where we meet monthly to kind of process issues. And that was like kind of one of my first experiences of like, oh, like I'm not seeing that stuff that's right here, and having that outside perspective and people coming in and identifying that is super helpful. So just having, if it's not me, if it's someone else, bringing somebody from outside your organization in to help you just like see the things that you can no longer see is super powerful.
It really is. And I don't know if there's a word for it or other than, the cobbler's kids have no shoes, but something of the concept of when you are insanely like attached to something, like constantly, both, emotionally, whatever you want to say, like you're in the work every day in and day out. That's all you see. And you get sort of that tunnel vision that you need that outside coach to like see things and just kind of cut the crap. Because, imagine if someone's put a lot of work into something for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it may be, and they're going to be convinced that that's the best solution because they are so emotionally tied to it. Meanwhile, they may have missed out on tons of other outside components that maybe they hadn't seen.
Yeah, and usually it's super simple stuff that we're missing or just not seeing, and fundamental really that you get so into it, and you may have already explored that idea, but it was 2 years ago, and your business has changed, and it's time to revisit that. But in your mind, you're thinking like, "Oh no, we've already done that and been there. We don't need to do that again." We're in reality, we're constantly changing and evolving, and we need to be able to revisit old ideas and pressure test different things, and having someone who can see that from that outside perspective and not have an agenda. They're there to show stuff that you're not seeing. It's pretty awesome. I always think it's super cool when you see that kind of like aha moment for people, and eyes come up like, "Huh, hadn't thought about it that way." And it'll be something super elementary to me that they probably would have come to on their own had they not been like right in the middle of it. But you're so involved in what's going on in front of you that it's hard to see.
Yeah, and even in evaluating those choices, if like you said, that option or conclusion might have been right in front of them all along, but if you're in a position where you're looking at 5 potentially quote equally viable solutions to a problem you're facing, if you don't know with great confidence that one of them is going to work, well then you're sort of stuck in that indecision, and that's where nothing gets done, and you're always just throwing out hypotheticals. That's where meetings can last hours and hours because you just don't know. But then, when someone shows a new perspective, it's like, okay, yes, that does make sense because we're seeing it in a different light by someone who has no emotional investment, no agenda, as you said, because that's always, I think, a subconscious bias when you're working on a team with folks. Like, is this the best idea, or is this going to advance their own personal agenda? And I think, I've seen that in companies and folks that I've worked with, clients, things like that. And it sucks because that's also a bias that you have for your own decisions. Like, well, this is going to help me a ton, and it's also going to help the company. Yeah, I mean, I see that. My marketing for my own personal self is not even half as good as what I do for other people, because it's like I'm so tied into it. So I totally get that.
Yeah,
so,
I work with a bunch of marketing companies, and it's funny as I'm working with them because that's exactly what they do for other organizations. They help build out their brands and show them how they should be attacking the world. But then internally, most of them have a really hard time figuring out how to sell themselves because you have all these things that you can do. How do you come up with that very simple, easy message for everyone else to understand?
and I guess going on that, do you find that whether it's these marketing agencies or other businesses tend to place equally great importance on all the things rather than having that one sentence, like super clear, specific thing of this is what we do, where they might say, oh, well, we have to talk about this component and that component. Suddenly their elevator pitch turns into much longer than it needs to be.
Yeah. I mean, you heard my elevator pitch when I got on. I had the same problem, right? I want to do all the things, right? But no, I mean, again, it kind of goes back to that, like, oh, I want to do all these different things, but I have a hard time simplifying my own brand because it changes so readily, and it's We get excited by so many different things. Having that very cohesive message is tough to come up to or on yourself or your own organization.
Yeah, it's tough to come up with, but I mean when you do it right, it's like it's a powerful magnet for people. I mean words can pierce. It can pierce through people's preconceived notions or like plant an idea, like an inception type of thing. So it's like simple, but it's a very powerful tool.
A big part, you kind of touched on this a minute ago, but just being able to make decisions and not ruminate on things for hours and kind of living in that indecision. You remember that guy, Tom, who helped do the EOS implementation at King of Pops?
Oh yeah.
One of the things I really learned from him is just like, okay, all the information's on the table. Time to make a decision. Who's in charge of this area? Make the decision. Like you've heard all the information. Anything we're doing past now is just politicking. So make your choice. We need to change it later. Great. Otherwise, let's not waste any more time. And that's tough to do with a group that you work with all day, every day. And being able to do that on a regular basis and be like, all right, decision time. Let's do it. Make a decision and let's move forward. Being able to do that with a group that you've been working with for a long time, it's really hard. So having someone from the outside come in and be like, all right, you guys have said it all. Make a choice. Here's your options. Go for it.
Yeah, and on that, something that's curious is like, people like to talk about being adaptable in business and pivoting and all that. Why do you think it's so hard for people to understand that concept and how important it is? But yet when it comes to decision time, they're afraid to make that decision because they forget that, wait, I can make this decision and still adapt it and change it later. Exactly as you said, how Tom advised. I mean, why do you think that's such a holdup for people of having that blindness to how they can make a definite decision in the present that they can still modify in the future?
I think that we're always wanting, a lot of us are wanting to impress and satisfy the people we have around us. We don't want to make the wrong choice. So we're scared to make a choice. And then, at the end of the day, what's interesting about business in general is there's never a right choice. There's always just a most educated decision. And understanding that there's going to be pitfalls to anything is hard to wrap your brain around. So I think, it's easy to kind of run with one choice or being comfortable with everybody disagreeing and then moving forward on one thing. Just a hard concept to do, especially when you're completely invested in it. As a business owner, your personal and work life are so intertwined. You don't want to mess things up. So sometimes the easier choice psychologically is like, let's just put that on the back burner. But that's just, death by a million stabs, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I love that. Well, and I think if we were to back that up a little bit, well, it's like, well, Andy, it's just as easy as being able to make that decision. Now, I would imagine like the company's culture and atmosphere, whatever it may be, is a massive factor into do the employees, managers, even the CEO, the boss, the owner feel comfortable in making a decision in an environment where they could potentially be wrong. And I guess maybe two-part question, do you think, or how much do you think culture can impact that? And then two, how do you impact the culture to get that way? Or how do you impact your work environment to get that culture to allow that collaborative space?
Cool. Good questions. I'm working right now with a company and kind of going through all this pandemic stuff that we've been dealing with on helping bring back in the talent that they want to bring back. Had to lay off a bunch of people. And so we're going through a core values exercise of really figuring out what behaviors they want to be inside their organization and using that as a backdrop to hire, fire, evaluate all their people. So decision-making is the same way. We have a big decision to make. Does this fit in with the values of our company or the behaviors that we think we should be doing to promote the culture that we want? So I think culture should always inform your decisions. And if you're being intentional about the type of culture that you want, which I think you should be, then you should always use that as a tool to help make sure you're making the decisions to push you in that direction.
Yeah. And it's not something to change overnight, because then if you think of backing that up even more, well, it's like, well, then you got to evaluate how you recruit and hire to get those people who match, that culture that you want. Now, if you're not there yet and you're like, some business owners looking at this or some of the stuff you're doing, it's like, well, how do I how do I get my culture impacted that way? I'm not going to necessarily get rid of all these people, but our mindsets are going this direction. I want to take them here. Is that, I mean, that's probably some type of cultural change that you help implement. And maybe what does that look like if you've had to make that shift for some folks?
Yeah, I think that kind of goes beyond culture and more into leadership. How can
Okay.
I move people the way I want? How can I lead them in the direction that I want to go in? Uh, so, I mean, when it goes back to decision making, sometimes we're going to make the wrong decisions, and that's okay. But we have to own up to that. So, have the humility to admit when you've made a wrong choice, and then pivot. We're going to have to do it all the time. We're always making bad decisions. But how do we react when we realize that that's not the way we should have gone? And being vulnerable enough to admit when we're wrong, right? I think that's kind of the way leadership is moving, and I think that is really what inspires people. If they can relate to you as a leader, like, oh, okay, you're not perfect either. Let me help you, or let me jump on that train because I know that you're willing to put the work in and admit when you're wrong, and then pivot and go back my way.
Dude, I love that. And that's something that I've always believed because there was a time when I did it the wrong way. And fortunately, I guess, however you see it, I made a lot of those mistakes. I used to be a public school teacher. Maybe, I don't know if you knew that. I think you did.
Yeah,
I totally made all the wrong decisions on leadership because when you're teaching, the content's easy. Like the content is a small piece, but it's really picking your battles, knowing when to flex, when to show your authority, but also when to admit you're wrong. And in that environment, it's insanely difficult, which I guess it would be difficult in any situation. But when I was in with King of Pops, I had learned that lesson by like having students who wanted to kill me, who like made my life a living hell. So I was like, I ain't gonna do that again. And so I can see it's a tough thing if a business owner is like to go to an employee and say, listen, let's think that it's one-on-one or in a group meeting, it doesn't matter. Hey, I made a mistake. What I decided on, that was wrong. And here's how I'm going to correct it. And I think the novice leader who has no leadership training would think, well, then your employee is going to take advantage of you, which is counterintuitive because they're actually not. And if they do, then it's an easy, hey, getting to a yes, no, when you can get to that type of decision, it's great because either yes, this person is the right fit, or no, we need to get them out. And if they try to take advantage of you by showing vulnerability, then they're not a culture fit. What's more likely to happen is you admit you're wrong, which gives everyone permission to admit their mistakes. Because I don't know if there's anything worse in an organization where mistakes are hidden by the employees and then they just erupt at a certain point. So not to say, oh, we're going to welcome mistakes as everyone's going to do it, but we're going to welcome mistakes and also empower you to recognize them and overcome them, which I thought just is a powerful thing.
Yeah, because you never want people to be scared to admit when they're wrong, or to mess up, right? Because that's where growth happens, is in those mess up moments. And if we're not empowering people to do things, then they're always going to come to us, and we're always going to have to do work for them, right? So we have to be comfortable with people messing up, but then empowering them to be okay with that, and learning from it and growing as a person and as somebody in our organization.
Dude, for sure. Well, you were talking about visioning before, as far as like having that as like a guiding point to your decisions. Now, is within visioning, I mean, is that things like core values, mission statement, the vision for the type of company? I don't know. How would you explain that to someone who's like, well, I don't know. I don't have a vision. I just make money. I'm trying to make a profit here, Andy.
Sure. No, I was looking at it as the North Star, but where are we ultimately going? And I think you always want to start with the end in mind, because if you don't start with the end in mind, then how are you ever going to get to that ultimate end, right? So I think you get to that spot where you're like, I have a cool idea. I want to start a popsicle company, and then you get into it for a few years. And we did this with King of Pops in like 2015, I want to say. Went up to Ann Arbor to this group called Zingerman's and did a big visioning seminar for a few days to come up with this 15-year vision. And what it looks like in that time. And, I think it's super powerful, one, to get on the same page with everybody in your organization. So y'all know where you're going. So planning becomes a lot easier. Like, all right, in 5 years, we're going to be making, this many widgets. I'm going to have this many customers, and we're going to be in this many different geographical locations and have this many people on the team. You can think like that. And a lot of times we have all those ideas in our head. We just haven't clarified them and gotten to specifics on them. But if we think we're going to be there in 5 years, well, it becomes easier to be like, all right, if we're there in 5 years, well, in 3 years, we need to be here on all these points. And then in 1 year, we'd have to be at this level on all those different aspects of the company. And if we're there in 1 year, well, in the next 90 days, what do I need to be doing to get there? And you set up that structure to constantly evaluate a tactical plan on how to achieve that big vision. And then things that, are just kind of pipe dreams all of a sudden become like this preferred, just like reality of like, oh, I can actually do that. So it's a great way to motivate people, motivate yourself, and get a lot more efficient with what you're doing.
Man, yeah, because it's like anytime there's something that's too far in the future that seems, again, it's that very fun to plan and have ideas and talk about it, but then it's like, well, then how do I actually get started? And if it's misaligned, you might not ever get there because, or not even misaligned if you don't even start, like, well, what can I do right this second to get there? And maybe it's just planning that out, breaking it down from, let's say, 5-year goal to a 1 year into a quarterly goal or monthly. Mm-hmm. It's just, then your task list becomes very easy. Like, hey, all I need to do are these things. That's going to help advance me to the next level. And you were mentioning also like how that plays in decisions. So I guess you could expand upon that. My guess is that you're not going to make decisions that deviate from it, because then it's like, well, I'm off course now.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it comes really good from a decision point of like understanding what we want to do. So if we've decided like, all right, in 5 years, this is where I'm going to be. And then this opportunity comes up, just is presented in front of us. We think it sounds pretty cool. Or normally we'd run with it. All of a sudden we have to evaluate whether like, okay, is that part of my 5-year vision? Something I spent time kind of crafting and coming up with and got everybody else believing in. Is that something that builds into that? Or is that a distraction? And it allows you to kind of evaluate stuff like that on a much more objective level. So you can make decisions easier. You can say no to stuff a lot easier. And you can come up with better tactical plans and really how to move everything forward and get everybody kind of rowing in that same direction.
Is that similar to, I guess it'd be like decisions on making your core value list, a mission statement, as part of a way to funnel into that decision-making process?
Yeah, I mean, to me, vision's all about where you want to go. Values are about like who you are and your culture. And then the mission or the purpose is why you're doing that. So they all kind of work together, and they're intertwined, but they're very different things at the end of the day. And I think there's all just tools in order to get to where you want to go, to motivate people, to get the right people helping you do what you need to do.
Okay, because I think that might be a misconception myself right here. Vision is not mission statement, and mission statement is going to help, is the why behind your vision overall. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, again, vision to me is all about, where are we going? What does this thing look like in the future? Your mission is all about why you're doing it, which is super important as well, right? That's motivating, and it gets you excited about why you're doing what you're doing. And then your values are all about who you are. Who do we want to be as a group? And how do we take that and inform and get people moving in the right direction towards the vision?
Okay, I can definitely see that now. Seeing this virtual triangle in my head of the two, because I mean, I got to imagine that some people are like, well, Andy, like, I've got a mission statement, dude. Like, what do I need your visioning exercise for? And it might be, working in tandem, or they're missing pieces that they could have, just because they're only limited in one of those 3 ways of thinking.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. And again, all 3 are very important, and they're all 3 kind of in that woo-woo category too. So I look at them as very strong components of a business strategy, but they're all kind of floating up here in this kind of, woo-woo kind of type land, which I can subscribe to that kind of stuff all day long. But a lot of what I do is bringing that stuff into and marrying that to the tactical side of what are we going to do to kind of get what we need to get done? In all of those components, your vision, your values, and your mission or your purpose feed right into the tactical decisions that we make every day, and can help inform the people that you get on board, and why you're doing all those things.
Right. And I think, it's taking that woo woo stuff because there's a line, and I'm with you. I had a call on Friday where the last 15 minutes, man, we talked about it. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff. I mean, like anything in moderation, but if you think about what's the practical reasons for having this, this is going to guide how you recruit, the type of person you're recruiting. Are you going to look more for attitude or for skills? Are you going to sacrifice a candidate because maybe they have all the skills but none of the attitude that you're looking for, and your vision, all that will do that. Will help you decide on that. Because if not, then your culture can get affected, how you make decisions, how you operate. So suddenly what is very woo-woo pie in the sky is now affecting how you're operating your entire business, because it's how you're operating and managing your employees and hiring them. And I think on the flip side, it's like, that's also your marketing message. If you take those three components of your vision, mission, and values, I mean, that's, you tell people what you're going to do, why, and who you are. I mean, you don't need to sell. My kind of, I don't know what you would call it, recent just thought has been that business relationships are the exact same as one-on-one human relationships. And I think the mistake that's been made for a while, I mean, you could say decades and decades, maybe it wasn't even a mistake. Maybe that's just how we're evolving as a society, as businesses, is that we're now more like aware of why a business does things, how they treat their employees. And that's affecting our decision makers, our decision making as buyers. So it's a very powerful thing to know, like, well, I'm going to support this company because of their charity component. They're like Tom's made their whole business around it. They were one of the first to do it. Now, so many businesses are following that lead of having a charitable contribution part to a for-profit business. It's very powerful.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, again, I think at their core, all those strategy components are internal tools. But you're exactly right. If you hit them on the nose, they're great external tools to draw people into your company, to craft those really good marketing messaging, and to understand how we connect with the public. And at the end of the day, the people that you have that you're hoping are part of that culture and that vision and are with you because of the mission that you're out there to perform. If they're the right people, well, they're the face of your organization, and they're ultimately going to make what you do that much better.
Yeah. I mean, you could think of every employee as a salesperson for what you're doing. And if they all are carrying the values, then, you got to think of everyone's network. Well, everyone knows where you work. And so if you're working for a great place and you're saying positive things about it, that's more likely customers coming in, as opposed to like, God, my job sucks. I have this boss who's a dick. I don't like anybody. Let's even think on that, like considering how, I guess, companies or businesses may or may not utilize these tools in front of them. If you were approached by a business and they're like, and you find out they have none of this, they don't have a vision, they don't have mission, they don't have core values, they're just kind of operating by the seat of their pants, and maybe they're already being successful in that their product or service has been market tested, they're making sales, people like what they're providing, but they don't have anything else in place. Like where would you think would be the one place to start?
So I always start with vision. If we know where we're going, it becomes a lot easier to get there. And then we can start to evaluate some of the culture components and some of the why behind what we got going on. Typically, people have an idea of what all those things are. They just haven't really clarified and spent the time making them to where they could be a good marketing message externally. So it's just a matter of taking that stuff inside the founder or the owner or the leadership's team, their head, and putting it down in a way that they can share with, one, the people that they have working for them, and two, then potentially everyone else in the world. So I always start with vision and then start to work in from there as far as like what do we instill first.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's like, hey, we're going to the beach.
Mm-hmm.
That's the vision. Well, why are we going? Well, that's the mission. We're going to surf. Okay. And then, I don't know, I'm not playing on this extended metaphor, but then the values might be with this extended metaphor. It's like, well, we believe in living.
What are they going to be doing at the beach, right? So, like, is it a surf crew that we're going with? Am I going there to make sandcastles? Am I going there to walk my dog? Like, what are the behaviors that we're going to be doing at the beach that kind of inform the culture that we want to build around us at the beach, right? And that kind of feeds right into the why we're going there. So you start to build out all these different things that you really like about your little mini beach culture that you do on your vacation when you get there, right?
Yeah. Which, okay, I think I got it. It's like we could go to the beach and we could be like Patrick Swayze and his crew of surfers who also rob banks, or we can just be this fun-loving group that's just, hey, we're just here to have a good time and, take a vacation and be in nature.
Yeah, exactly. And then, as you grow your group from out there, like, how do you manage everybody, and how do you bring in different personalities, and how do you get them all communicating better together? With larger companies who've kind of got some of those core strategy components together, we use a software platform called Predictive Index to do like personality assessments, but then use that to build out teams and to get to understand people better, and understanding, how some people like to talk out their problems, and some people would much rather get an email on an issue and be able to read through it and form an opinion over a couple of days. Some people really like structure. Some people would much rather fly by the seat of their pants. Some people like to be on a team. Some people like to work by themselves. So how do we understand those different things about different people, and then being able to use that to communicate more appropriately with everybody?
Dude, I love that. I've learned that there's similar concepts in the name of situational leadership, and to me, it's just been such a foundational piece of how I approach things and look at people that I'm working with. One thing that I always thought was like the idea of consistency can be an excuse for laziness. And so if you're like, well, we have this policy and this is how we're going to operate, and it applies to everybody because we want to be consistent. Now, on what you were saying is, well, that's where, if you treat everyone how they need to be treated or want to be for the sake of, to get everyone actually rowing in the same direction, you can sacrifice consistency for, hey, I'm going to email this person, but for this other person, I got to hop on a call. Or anything that you might do to modify your managing. I guess if you want to maybe elaborate on that, because now we're kind of diving into management, which I love. We still got a little bit of time to address this topic.
No, the idea of personalized management, I think, is fascinating. Like, how can I connect with someone on a deeper level with just like small life hacks, right? To customize my approach to what makes them most productive, and or let them know how I like to receive information or work within the world to get the most out of me. And I think there's a give and take there. It's like with any relationship, but just identifying and having one self-awareness, but then me being aware of how you like to operate allows me to treat you in a way to make you the most successful. Knowing that you're an extroverted person, Paul, which I'd assume you're a pretty extroverted guy.
You got that right, my friend.
On something like being quarantined, it's tough for you to not be around people. You get energy being around people and being able to just ad hoc and kind of go off cuff and being able to just chit chat with folks. So yeah, that gives you energy. So having to sit at home all day is kind of tiring and kind of depressing, right? And so how can I connect with you on a better way? It's like, let's do a Zoom call, or let's do even further than that. Let's do one with 6 people on it so we can talk with different people at the same time. And how can we start to understand a better way to put you in a place where you have energy so you like doing the things that you're doing. So yeah, the PI guys, the predictive index guys, they like to use this adage: instead of living by the golden rule, which is treat others as you treat yourself, live by the platinum rule, which is treat others as they would like to be treated.
Dude, and that there's a concept in copywriting or marketing, which is kind of the same, where it's like, if you can help people achieve their dreams and support them along the way, and then also throw rocks at their enemies, there's some like line that sounded a lot better. But if you can take that and like people are like, be super loyal to you. And the context of copywriting, it's like, well, if you can show how your product or service can help them do that, they're going to buy from you. But that concept is fundamental of, I think, of human nature. And that's why it's like, well, whether it's, if a friend coming to me, hey, Paul, like, times are tough. How can I help you? Like, damn, dude, you're a great friend to me. You can do that likewise if you're a manager to your employee, or from a business to your customers. And I think, the misconception of like certain words of being like an excuse for laziness, where there are times when you need to be consistent, but also you want to treat people as they want to be treated. And again, I think that misconception, counterintuitiveness that new managers would have is, well, is hearing the excuse from someone, well, hey, wait, why did you do this for Billy, but not for me? You called them up. It's like, well, do you want to be treated that way? One, but then two, whatever that situation is, it's being strong enough as a leader to say, well, this situation was completely different than yours. So yeah, I'm not going to have one consistent way to, handle a situation within my employees, because everybody is differently. I'm treating the situation exactly as it calls for, based on the person within it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. One example I always like to use involves my bro, old Danny boy. When we were just getting King of Pops going in Charleston, he was my first employee here, and we didn't really have any kind of process set up at that point. And I could care less about process. I teach people a lot of it now because I found a lot of freedom in it. But I'm happy just tell me where we're going and I'll just figure out how to get there. That's totally fine by me. And so as we were trying to figure out like a catering process or a program in Charleston when we first got going, I was like, all right, Danny, I'm gonna let you kind of lead that, go figure that out for me. He's like, okay, cool. How do I do that? And I was like, I don't know, figure it out, which to me makes total sense. But Danny is a process guy. So to him, figure it out, it's just like, no, I need to know how to do it. You got to show me how these things are done, then I'll do it great. And there was some contention there for a while, and it was just a small switch from, all right, I don't know how to do this either. Can you help us build a process for this? Now help me figure out what that process is, as opposed to just figure out what the process is. Was like a light switch. It was like, oh, that I can do. Got it. So most of the time, it's just small little tweaks with people to make them a lot more comfortable and empathize with where that stress for them is coming from.
It's fascinating because I've always thought of, I think people, and this might be the similar of like introvert, extrovert, maybe not a direct correlation, but some people are a lot more process oriented, where others are more maybe people oriented. And for someone to say, hey, yeah, I trust you to figure this out, to some that would be very empowering. Like, oh man, like cool, I get to do this how I want to. I can make mistakes or just create it because there's no, level of measurement for it. But to someone else, it's like, God, you're really not helping me out here. It's like you're really tossing something on me that's going to be a lot of work. But it sounds like in this situation, it's just a simple tweak of wording. Like, hey, I don't know this. I'm leaning on you to help me build this process out. Let's work on it together. So, I guess if you're aware of how your employees are, who you're working with, you can help, I guess, deliver the same. Right? Yeah.
Know who you can say, like, all right, here's where we're going, figure it out. And know we're like, all right, here's where I'd like things to be. Can you figure out the steps on how to get there for me? And what would be most efficient, right? And again, that is just a tweak on words. And one, you may need to do a little more hand-holding, but that also gives you an idea of like who you should be giving different type tasks to and who's going to be most successful in what roles. Because if you can put people in areas where they're very naturally fit for, they're going to be happier doing them, be more efficient doing them, more productive. And ultimately the organization's going to do a lot better.
Yeah, oh man, there's so much great stuff here, because it's knowing exactly what to say to who to get the response you want. And then also there could be an element of like, well, do you even have a clear vision on what you want? So maybe if we're looking at this example again, let's say you've got Danny that's more process oriented, and let's say you've got someone, Midge, who's more people oriented. It might be like, okay, I have this task that I need completed. I need to really get the catering process down and have it doing well. Let me start with Midge. work with Mitch to get the overall structure of it, and then we can take it to Danny to refine it and process it to make it like a cohesive thing. Because I'm the same way. Like I can here's an idea, and someone help me make it into a process and make it nice and orderly. I'm better at following processes than I am creating them. I think a lot of people are probably like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, and just making sure you're putting people in those different strength areas, just get more out of them, right? And, we're all adults, so we can do things that don't come naturally to us. But if we can do more of the things that are natural for us, then we're going to be happier doing those things, and we're going to produce a lot better work, and be much happier with where we're working. And as a manager, you're going to look like a genius.
That's true. I mean, man, it's curious. Like kind of like we started talking on the visioning, the core values, the mission, and I mean, I think the last 10 minutes has been like you just dropping some truth bombs and knowledge bombs on like fundamentals of leadership that a lot of people might not know. Like there was a time when I was like, man, you can't teach leadership. You just got to like go out and do it. It's kind of true to a degree. But if you were looking at, hey, what are some mental models that you can equip new managers and new leaders with? I mean, I think it'd be everything you were just talking about of, what was it, the people and the PI?
Yeah, the one we use is predictive index, but
Predictive index.
It's like, how can we give people a roadmap on how to get the most out of their people? And when you're managing, that's what it's all about, right? How can I motivate, inspire, and hold accountable this team of people that I'm now managing? And typically, we promote people into a management position, but we don't show them how to manage at all.
Yeah.
Right. And that's all about motivating people and getting what you need out of them. And a big part of that is being able to relate with them, know what they're naturally good at, and then, really taking advantage of those strengths and then training them up on some areas that they're not so great at or don't come naturally to them, to help them, continue moving in the direction you like to move in.
Now, what do you think of like if you're talking to a CEO owner and maybe you're teaching some of their managers, VPs, whoever on these concepts, but then let's say the owner comes to you and like, Andy, I've told my operations manager or whoever of this type of stuff, and then I'm still hearing from employees that nothing has changed. What is some resistance that these folks typically have in actually implementing them?
I mean, a lot of times it's just resistance to change, right? I was doing it this way. Why do I need to do it a new way? And change is tough for most people, right? Just because we're not familiar with it. But then some people are happy doing a bunch of different things all the time. So if we're going to make a big change in an organization, let's start on a smaller level with the people who are comfortable with that change, and then phase the people who are more comfortable with the familiar in on a slower type basis. So we're not just giving them a gut punch and being like, have fun with this.
Change.
Right. But I mean, part of what you just said was it's all about holding people accountable. So you can put them in the right position to do what you think they need to do. But if you're not holding them accountable and you haven't made it explicitly clear on what you expect out of them, then, I think that's the first we do. Are they know what they're supposed to be doing? Two, how do you hold people accountable? We like to use this process of like using a team to hold people accountable. So it's all about, the person who's accountable for something, one, agreeing to that task or that duty or that initiative. And then two, following up with them, making sure that there's consequences to not doing what they agree to, and building a culture around that idea of like, you do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah, and you follow up, which I was trying to think if does that disprove the consistency model? Because I guess it's time and place. Like we're going to be consistent of like each person may have different expectations, but what the consistent factor is if you don't hit those expectations or do the follow through, then here is the process that everyone has to go through of, oh, hey, you didn't meet your quota, whatever it is, you didn't do X, Y, Z, and then strike one, strike two, strike three, if that's what they even want to call it.
Yeah. No, exactly. A lot of times too, if we can just create, a peer group to hold everybody accountable, a lot of us just don't want to let our peers down as opposed to our boss, right? So if we can bring the team in on holding everyone accountable for their own initiatives, all of a sudden as a manager, it's not just you holding people accountable, it's your whole team holding each other accountable. If you can get on that level, then you're really playing ball.
And it's these factors that like getting into some woo woo, like, but it's also just like group dynamics of, yeah, that environment is going to be more influential on someone's behavior than just having a written up process on the wall. And so how you approach that is going to be wildly, impacted by, I guess, I don't know, the glue that makes up everything, which to me is rapport. Rapport makes up all that. And so just to expand on that a little bit, when you have those vulnerable moments, by being vulnerable, you build a massive amount of rapport. So then when it is time to make a change, it's done much more easily than if it's just, nope, I'm in charge and it will be done to my will because I'm the leader. A lot of people are like, dude, I don't like that. So I'm just going to resist this as much as I can just because I don't have rapport with you. And, rapport being something misunderstood. It's not just sharing commonalities with people, which is like, yeah, what they teach you in sales, not always like, oh, Andy, like I see you've got whatever book in there. Man, I love that book too. That can be a way to at least start with rapport. But when you have folks that are in there, it's like, listen, dude, I fucked up. Like I made a mistake and I'm sorry. 9 times out of 10, 999 times out of 1,000, the employees gonna be like, oh my God, this person is awesome. They're gonna feel that. It's a powerful moment that builds that kind of chemistry within a team.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It's also like you're being vulnerable enough and you're trusting the team that they're going to be okay with you acting that way. And by you extending that trust, all of a sudden you're getting a lot of trust from them. Because when people see a human in front of them instead of a boss, they're a lot more likely to help you out and to do what you ask them to do and to do it in a timely manner and do it really well.
Yeah, I think there could be a quote there of like, people follow leaders, they don't follow bosses. And Machiavelli had a quote. It was like, anytime you flex your muscle, anytime you have to like show a show of force and show that you are the authority, people will comply. You'll win that battle, but over time you'll lose the war because it'll kind of deteriorate the whole thing. So it's like, influence people by all these other things that we've just talked about, not by the sheer fact of your position.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, well, man, I mean, I could keep going, but I want to be respectful of your time.
What happened to the last hour?
Huh?
What happened to the last hour?
What happens to the last hour?
No, what happened to the last hour? We just got right there.
Oh yeah, dude, I felt like we were just getting started, which is a cool thing. I mean, we covered a ton of stuff. I mean, I think I always like to just do a brief recap. It's like, yeah, we talked about visioning, mission, values, a ton on management, which I think is kind of like how you then implement it. So I think it was a logical discussion, even though it might have seemed we bounced on a lot of subject, but I think it was pretty cohesive, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Well, any parting words of wisdom or whatever else? Where can we find you, learn more about you and what you do?
Yeah, I think I love doing this sort of thing. At the end of the day, I think as leaders, it's all about being able to connect with people, communicate appropriately, and being able to solve problems and being able to be comfortable solving problems. So yeah, our website's people-surge.com. So people-surge.com. You can find us there, and if any of your people want to take a little PI assessment, they can reach me at andy@people-surge.com. It's like a 5-minute assessment. It's really cool. Happy to get a little complimentary assessment to anybody who wants one.
Dude, that's tight. I'm sure that's like, any type of personality test is so intriguing. Like, ooh, maybe do that if have you done that? Like is that applicable in marriage or in relationships, or is it like, nah, I don't want to touch that?
Oh yeah. During this whole quarantine thing, me and my wife have been leaning hard just to kind of get through.
I bet.
It's kind of cool because you can the one I use is they have a really cool software backend, so you can plug different people in to see how their behaviors match up and how you can and should act with one another, give you some strengths and weaknesses and tips on how to move forward.
Dude, that's next level. That's kind of cool. Because it's probably all the stuff that you want to say but just haven't, or
Right.
she's like, I wish Andy would just be able to know this about me. And you're like, well, I've done some research, which helps out. Cool, man. Well, dude, had a blast with you, and dude, we'll chat again soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. Appreciate you having me on, and yeah, we'll talk real soon. I need to get you to take the OPI assessment.
I'll do it. I'll lead the way. I'll share it with everybody just so it's like, hey, get on this.
There you go.
Word up, man. Take care.
See you later.